and I see my man in the background to clear the air, Dimitri Lascaris. Dimitri, we keep meeting like this, man. How you doing?
Good, man. I know it is Jamarl, but I seem to cause your guests to.
I don't know what it is. Do you realize that has happened twice in the entirety of the show history, even going back for like 10 years? And you were the only person. Look, the KJ one, I don't know what that's about, to be bluntly honest. That one is still weird to me because what you said was just innocuous. Daniel is a true believer, so he is being earnest in what he thinks about this stuff. But thank you for coming on to clear the air about this. And Dimitri Lascaris, lawyer, journalist, activist from Montreal, Quebec. He runs the show Reason to Resist. He's a damn good friend of the show. To give a little background to people who may not have seen it, I had a guest on the show, Daniel Lazar. Daniel Lazar heard a tail end of something that you said. I don't think he heard the tail end of it correctly, but whatever. And he calls your take on it foolish. This is in relation to saying the Palestinians is ultimately going to carry the day, that the Palestinians is ultimately going to win. It doesn't seem like it. It's a dark day, but this is going to ultimately be a victory. Israel is going to fail. He didn't necessarily agree with that take, called the take foolish. So he was willing to debate you any moment, even went so far as to say guys like that don't debate. And I was like, what do you mean guys like that? You don't even know him. I was like, what do you mean guys like who? I sent him the thing that you pointed out saying, look, you're willing to have this conversation, have this debate. I've been running, so I haven't had the opportunity to check my messages. I did think he sent a response. So maybe this is something that's going to take place. I wanted you to be able to respond to the video, though. You've watched it, you've seen it. And one last point, you sent me polling of what Palestinians actually think on the ground. Thank you for that. And I've went through this entire document. Let's start at the beginning first before we get to this. You watched the video. Give me your thoughts.
Well, first of all, thank you for, again, giving me the opportunity so graciously to come on your program and to respond. And just to be fully accurate, he didn't just call me a fool, he called me an idiot to boot. And that came right out of the gate. Before I address his argument, I'm going to reiterate right here and now. I started laughing when he said, oh, I don't think he's going to want to debate me. I issued a debate about 5 months ago, Jamarl, to the 25 most influential and respected and affluent Zionist lawyers in Canada on the question of whether Israel is committing genocide. Some of these people know me personally, and all of them know who I am, even if they haven't actually met me, I assure you, because of my work in the legal profession in Canada. I sent it to their inboxes. I went to the trouble of finding their emails and sent it to them, and not one of them accepted my challenge in 4 months. So this guy coming on your show and go, oh, he's not going to want to debate me. Here it is, Daniel. I'm telling you right now in front of all of Jamarl's audience, I would love to debate you. I would love to debate you. And in fact, I sent you a message last night over Twitter in response to some Zionist nonsense you were spewing in reply to a very troubling tweet by Treaty Parsi. This is what happened, by the way. Treaty Parsi put out a video of dozens of Israeli women dancercising to a song called May Your Villages Burn. Okay?
That's grotesque.
Okay,
that's crazy.
And Daniel Lazar's response to this was, please, they do the same thing on the other side. That was his response. So I then replied to him and said, I accept your challenge for a debate. I still haven't received his response. So let's just get that out of the way right now.
I got a response from Daniel on this. And I think he's down to have this conversation.
Fantastic.
I've had a conversation. Daniel and I have gotten into a fight over the Israel thing once before. We were not supposed to be talking about that. The conversation we were talking about was, I think it was the government shutdown and the way that it operated. And he heard the tail part of what you and wanted to add into that. There is nobody. Look, if I feel some kind of way, this is a normal Finkelstein argument, right? If I hate you, but I hate you because you've been killing me, I'm not wrong for that. Like when you've murdered hundreds of thousands of people, women and children, in this kind of ritualistic way, and your entire society agrees with it, I'm not wrong for feeling some kind of way and hating your guts for you being that demonic. that is different than Israelis making videos or making movies or songs about their genocide, them committing a genocide. Those things are not equal. Those things are not a one-to-one. I hope that's gross. That's
you,
very
you
gross.
don't need to persuade me. And it, by the way, the Zionists like Lazar exaggerate the level of hatred on the Palestinian side. And furthermore, this grotesque disparity in violence doesn't start on October 7th. It started with the Nakba, okay? The Israelis began to steal Palestinian land in Gaza and the West Bank, the occupation, in 1967, Jamal. That was more than 20 years before Hamas was created. So please, Mr. Lazar, stop boring us with your Hamas justification for Israel's satanic behavior. This has been going on since the founding of Israel, even beforehand. And frankly, I'm amazed at the fact that so few Palestinians have lashed out in this way, given what they've experienced. But let's move on to his argument. And I want to be clear, Jamal, I don't give a damn what Daniel Lazar thinks about me. I do take umbrage at him insulting me and mischaracterizing my position on your program, which I have great respect for. You have over 70,000 subscribers, lots of people watching this guy spew his Zionist crap. And that's really what concerns me, is his misstatements about the Palestinians. I couldn't care less about his opinion of me. So right out of the gate, he comes on, and this is what he says, okay? I took careful notes. I want to be sure that I got it right. Okay. After calling me a fool and an idiot, Lazar said to you that that I had characterized the fact that Hamas is currently waging deadly battles against criminal gangs in Gaza as a victory for the Palestinian people. That's what he said.
He said, I told him that wasn't true, by the way. I said that was nonsense.
Of course, and you were totally right. I mean, I don't know what part of the video he saw, but I've never said that in my entire life. In fact, I would be the first to admit that that's a tragedy for the Palestinian people, but it's a tragedy of Israel's making, because A, Israel created the famine, and B, Israel is arming these criminal gangs. And the fact that it's doing that has been widely acknowledged within the Israeli media. This is something that Lazar never mentioned. And just today, Jamal, the Washington Post put out an article. I encourage Mr. Lazar to go read it, where leaders of two of these criminal gangs said that they had received aid from Israel. Okay, they are taking aid from the state that is mass murdering and starving the children of Palestine. Okay, that tells you all you need to know about who these people are. Whatever you may think of Hamas, the idea that these people are fighting for the Palestinians is laughable. Laughable. They are largely a monster of Israel's creation. But I regard that as a tragedy. The reason why I did say, as you've heard me say many times, I believe that the Palestinians are heading for victory, and that the Israelis are heading for a strategic defeat. And I've said very clearly, repeatedly, what my reasons are for believing this. Number one, Israel's military, after using shocking, monstrous levels of violence against the civilian population of Gaza, has not defeated the armed resistance groups. And it's not just about Hamas. There are numerous armed resistance groups operating still, viable, armed, fighting on the ground in the Gaza Strip. They have imposed a severe price on Israel's hugely armed military, which is backed up by the entirety of NATO. The Israeli military is exhausted, it's demoralized, it's discredited, its weapon stocks are depleted, it has a crisis of PTSD, it has a crisis of suicide, and if it continues this genocide, which it seems hell-bent on doing, it's just going to get worse. And you have to take my word for it. You can listen to people like Scott Ritter, people come on your program, Lawrence Wilkerson, Larry Johnson, Douglas McGregor, and on and on. Military experts, intelligence experts are offering that view. Israel's military is in serious problem. They also have tens of thousands of reservists not showing up for duty. Okay, they have tens of thousands of soldiers who are permanently disabled. So they're in serious trouble there, number one. Number two, the economy is being battered. The cost of this war has been enormous. Israel's debt has been downgraded twice. Israel has withdrawn from the economy hundreds of thousands of able-bodied men, many of them highly educated. So that's having a serious cost. And if this continues, the cost is going to accumulate. Number three, and perhaps the most important reason I say Israel is headed for defeat and Palestinians for victory, is that Israel is probably the most detested state on God's green earth today. And even within the United States, you see plummeting polls and major figures from the MAGA movement who were previously fanatically pro-Israel coming out strong against Israel. We know who they are, okay? And Israel has legal problems. Its current prime minister and its former defense minister are indicted by the ICC. There's a genocide case pending against it in the International Court of Justice, which is almost certainly going to go badly for Israel. And I'm not being exhaustive here, Jamal. These are the reasons. These are the reasons why I say that Israel is headed for defeat and Palestinians for victory. And if Mr. Lazar has an answer, he believes he has an answer to each and every one of the points that I've made, then I'm going to give him an opportunity to make his points. But don't misrepresent my opinions, Mr. Lazar. This is what Zionists do. They fabricate their opponent's position and then they ridicule it. You know, if a Zionist's lips are moving, chances are he's lying. Okay, let's be honest. Okay, so that's not my position, Mr. Lazar.
Yeah, he misrepresented what you said. And that's why I was very emphatic. Like, he didn't say that. And he was like, well, I said, he didn't say that. I heard exactly what he said. The Palestinians are going to be victorious in the end. This is the report that you gave me. And just so the audience can see it. Because one of the things that Daniel pointed out, him and I got into this back and forth over Abbas. And my point was, Abbas is hated. He's hated by his own people. He's a collaborator. Daniel didn't believe that. And for whatever reason, he believed that Abbas was liked a bit more. Now, my point of view comes from all of the people who come on the show who cover that as a journalist or are coming from that region, who are very clear Abbas is hated. I've never heard a person say a good word about Abbas. The data that you gave me makes several points. A, Gazans are human beings. Like, so their points of view diverge. Abbas is hated, deeply hated. There's a split in regards to how people view October 7th. In fact, I'm going to let you go through this. I don't want to take over the interview.
No problem.
But give me your take on this document that you sent and the perspectives that the Gazans have, and even people in the West Bank, who, as I point out, they're human beings. They care about themselves. They care about their lives. They care about resistance. This idea of giving up weapons is a no. They don't believe that giving up the hostages is going to stop Israel from murdering them further. Like, it's an interesting breakdown of polling of people who are actually in the area, West Bank and in Gaza. Give me your thoughts.
Okay, so first of all, I sent this to you because Lazar went on and on and on about the need for democracy in Palestine. I'm just like laughing my head off, because if he actually cared about democracy in Palestine, he would inform himself about the views of Palestinians. And this data is readily available. What I sent to you is just the most recent of many polls that have been done in the occupied territories by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research. You could find this poll doing a 30-second search with whatever search engine you use. That's how available and accessible it is. And I'm going to highlight some of the findings. I really recommend to people they look at this poll, because exactly what you said, Jamal. It shows that they're human beings. There's a diversity of opinion in their society. They're struggling with how to deal with this horrible situation. And there are a lot of surprises in there for people who care to look. So the poll found, first of all, let's recall that Mr. Lazar said that Hamas is a dictatorship, okay? And he said that if there were an election held today, Hamas would lose by a margin of 10-1. What drug is this man smoking? What drug is this man smoking? A serious political commentator looks at credible polling evidence and doesn't pull numbers out of his ass. Now, before I tell you what the number is in this poll, let's recall that in 2006, Hamas won the last legislative elections that were held in Palestine. They were certified to be free and fair by international election observers. They won by a substantial margin, over 70 seats, whereas Fatah, the party led by Mahmoud Abbas, won less than 40. So it was a clear victory. What did Israel do? Israel began to arrest the Hamas officials who had run for political office and won seats in the National Assembly of Palestine, and also arrested ministers in the government, in the newly appointed government, and withheld tens of millions of dollars from the Palestinian Authority, which was intended for the construction of infrastructure in the Gaza Strip. So it immediately did everything within its power with the backing of Western states. And by the way, Bush, he was urged not to allow Hamas to run, but Mahmoud Abbas was so confident that he would win that George Bush the Younger allowed Hamas to run, and it won clearly. Okay, so Israel squashed the democratic will of the Palestinian people, and Mr. Lazar doesn't have a word to say about this. For a man who's so deeply concerned about democracy in Palestine, you'd think he'd utter a peep of criticism of how Israel and its Western backers squashed the democratic will of the Palestinian people the last time they allowed them to have an election. So that's the background. So let's fast forward now, 19 years later. In May of this year, this organization I just mentioned does this poll, and a number of interesting questions. First, it asked if there's a two-way race between the leader of Hamas and Mahmoud Abbas, how would you vote? And this is across both the Gaza Strip and the occupied West Bank. 68%, this is after almost 2 years of genocide, which Hamas's opponents have blamed on Hamas, okay? 68% said they would vote for the Hamas leader, and a mere 25% said they would vote for Abbas. They also asked if there was a three-way race with the leader of Hamas and the leader of Fatah, or the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, and Marwan Barghouti, who is languishing under conditions amounting to torture in an Israeli dungeon for over 20 years, how would you vote? 50% said they would vote for Barghouti, 35% said for Hamas, and a lowly, pathetic, discreditable 11% said that they would vote for Mahmoud Abbas. Remember, what we were told by Lazar is that Hamas would lose by a margin of 10-1 if there were an election held today. The man's literally just, delusional. Now, they went on and they asked a number of other questions that are relevant to Lazar's claims. So right now, I just talked to you about the questions relating to leaders, like the president, who's going to be the big boss, okay? They then asked them, how would you vote in terms of political party? The largest percentage said 32% said they would vote for Hamas, followed by 21% for Fatah, and 12% selected third parties, and a very, very large proportion, 34%, said they would not support any of them or do not know. But a substantial plurality of the voters preferred Hamas. So again, they'd lose by 10-1. Are you kidding me? Then they asked, and I point this out because, I want to just talk about the protests, because the evidence, the so-called evidence that Lazar cited for his claim that Hamas would be annihilated if there was an election in Gaza today were the protests, the anti-Hamas protests in the Gaza Strip. This poll asked them about those protests. And you know what it found? It found that only 28% of the people living in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip supported the protests, and 67% opposed them. And the majority of them felt that these protests were being influenced by external actors. To the extent that Mr. Lazar was suggesting, and he clearly was, that those protests reflect the majority opinion in Palestine, that's just complete and utter nonsense. Finally, Lazar, he didn't quite come out and say this, but I think that the strong implication of his argument was that armed resistance has been a disaster for the Palestinian people. And he even said he doesn't even like the word resistance. He thinks it's a word we shouldn't even use when we talk about these groups. And so this poll asked Palestinians what they think about the demand that Hamas disarm. 80% said they are opposed. So that means a lot of people who don't even support Hamas oppose the disarming of Hamas. 80% across the Gaza Strip and the West Bank said they oppose it, and only 17% said they support it. So in conclusion on this point, Jamal, I actually care about the democratic will. I'm not a fraud like Daniel Lazar, who says, oh, I care so deeply about democracy in Palestine, and then just pulls numbers out of his ass that are completely contradicted by the available polling evidence. That's why I pay attention to this and other polls. And I can say with a high level of confidence that he has no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, that poll is damning. And it makes rational sense, right? You are being maligned for the last 70 years. You're being thrown in prison. You're being beaten. You are being occupied. Resistance seems like it's the most natural thing in the world. And as you point out in that poll, when they asked people, like, should Hamas be disarmed? They were very clear, no. And the reason is because they have no belief that Israel will stop killing them, even if they disarm. meaning from the point of view of the people who are on the ground, this will only get worse. Let's look at Lebanon for the moment, right? Israel has a ceasefire with Lebanon, and they're taking every opportunity to commit murder. They're taking every opportunity to effectively blow up the ability for them to rebuild. And they are trying to get the government of Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah, saying, hey, if you disarm, trust us, everything will be great. It's like, do you think we're idiots? Hamas is in the same situation, or the Palestinians are in the same situation. If you disarm, do you believe that Israel will treat you somehow differently? And the answer is obvious. No. The answer is obvious.
The poll, I really want to, that's such an important point you made. And I think it bears pointing out that this poll found that the opposition to disarmament was higher in the West Bank than Gaza. Now, why might that be? Because the people in the West Bank are governed by a collaborator who turns its arms on Palestinians, not on the occupier.
Yes.
Okay? And look what's being done to them. They're being murdered. Their houses are being destroyed. Their olive trees are being uprooted. Their grazing land is being used by illegal settlers. They're being humiliated. They're not putting up armed resistance to any significant degree. It pales in comparison to what the resistance groups in Gaza are doing. And look how they're being treated. So they know from personal experience, if we lay down our weapons, these people, these mass murderers, are going to kill us with even greater ferocity. That's what they believe, and it's a rational belief.
Yeah. And it's a rational belief. Yeah, it's a completely rational belief. I mean, we have watched Israel murder hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. And we're not talking about them just going after Hamas. Like, Donald Trump is making this argument like, yeah, they killed 70,000 Hamas. Okay, so you're telling every baby, every woman, every old man, meaning every last person that they murdered, they are making the argument that they're Hamas. I can show you footage of what Gaza looks like right now. It looks like a graveyard where they are still digging bodies out of the rubble, where those bodies are going to easily reach hundreds of thousands of people dead. What on earth would give any of the people on the ground the belief that if you give up your weapons, that Israel will treat you kindly and modestly? I don't know where that belief comes from. And neither do the people on the ground have it. I'm so glad you gave that poll, because that poll makes it very clear that Abbas, collaborator, it's the way he's seen. He would not win an election if the election was being held. Hamas would win that election if that election was being held. The people are split in regards to October 7th, but they're human beings that are rational. Many of them were concerned about attacks by Israel. So again, that's a rational behavior to be somewhat split on that. And the other gentleman, as you point out, that is languishing in prison, the exact reason that Israel is not letting him out is because of the results of that poll. Exactly. That he unifies the West Bank and he unifies Gaza. And the entire reason that Israel supported Hamas at the beginning is to create a deviation in the split between a political coalition between these two groups, between Gaza and the West Bank. They didn't want the political coalition. That guy's languishing in prison as we speak. And they know for a flat fact, if they let him out, he will be a political lightning rod. And they don't.
He's not Hamas. And I'm sure Lazar knows this. Why doesn't Lazar, if he cares so much about democracy in occupied Palestine, criticize the Israeli government for refusing to release Marwan Barghouti, the most popular person in the political theater in occupied Palestine, who would readily defeat Hamas according to this poll if there was a three-way election? And there's one other thing I really, if you'll just indulge me, I think it's very important to say, this isn't at the end of the day about what you and I think about Hamas or any other political faction. This is about respecting the democratic will of the Palestinian people. Okay, if you actually believe in democracy, you'll accept their choice, which we have consistently refused to do. And we're in fact driving them towards groups that are committed to armed resistance by refusing to use nonviolent methods to end their suffering. We could easily do that, just cut off the weapons to this, this lunatic entity, but we keep providing it with the means to kill Palestinians. So what are they going to do? They end up gravitating naturally, rationally, to groups that are taking up arms against their oppressor because they see no other way to defend themselves, right? Yes. But it's not about whether you or I support any particular group. If we adopted the attitude of people like Lazar and the Western governments and the US government towards Israel, this is what we would say to them. We would say to them, the Likud party is guilty of every crime against humanity known to the human race. And it's currently governing Israel and committing a genocide in Palestine. Every single one of its leaders is a murderous psychopath. We forbid you from allowing Likud to run. We forbid you from allowing any of its leaders or members to stand for office in any capacity. We will not tolerate a Likud government, nor will we tolerate any of those other parties that are a member of Netanyahu's psychopathic coalition running for political office. Do you hear anybody in the West saying that? Jamaro, do you hear Mr. Lazar saying that? We take it upon ourselves to tell the victims of genocide who can and cannot be their leaders, but the perpetrators of the genocide are perfectly free to keep re-electing these mass murderers. That's disgusting.
Dimitri, you have my full, absolute, complete, unabridged agreement on all of this. You have laid your case out in magnificent fashion. I would imagine you were a fantastic lawyer, the way that you're making your points. And just so happen, the facts, just so happy to be on your side on this. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And the data backs it up. So I will arrange this debate. I was laughing after the fact, because when somebody is like, people like that never want to debate, and very strong about it. And it's like, but you don't know him. Like, you don't know anything about that guy. And you just got a point of view. That's it, right? How are you being this strong about something like that? And it's like, be careful what you wish for.
Typical arrogance. That's all I can say. The arrogance.
Like you're going to be put through perdition.
I may sound a little arrogant myself, Jamaro, but at this stage, I'm not so sure he's going to keep his commitment to debate me. But I hope I'm wrong. I
think he will.
Good. I would be happy as hell for that to happen. I think your audience and all the people who listen to us debate, I think will learn something from the experience.
Well, that's what I hope. That's my hope. That's my fervent hope. I don't like mean-spirited back and forth. I do like what you just did, elucidating reality. This is what's true. It's not about, nobody has petitioned their way to freedom, right? I beseech you. I give you a strongly worded letter. Please stop occupying me. Nobody does that. And I think I even pointed out in that interview, it was like, dude, when they go out and march, they are shot. In the last return marches, they were shot in the legs. Specifically in the knees, in the head, and in the stomach. They were targeting specific points in order to cripple or kill. That was a march. That was a peaceful march. It didn't work. It didn't matter. Dimitri, you're awesome.
Thank you. Awesome. You too. Thank you.
I will do my best to arrange this for next week. I'll see if he's still on board and he wants to do it. He may want to change the specific topic, but we'll see. He seemed to be in for it. He seemed to be wanted to have that conversation. So
great.
I'm open to having it. And I'm glad that you're willing to have it. As I said, be careful what you wish for, and talk about him on this. You're awesome, man. Dimitri Lascaris, Reason to Resist, lawyer. I want to say journalist because you actually do damn good work, but lawyer, journalist, activist, Montreal, Quebec. Reason to Resist on YouTube. Definitely check Dimitri out. This is a morsel of goodness, like a tiny crumb of goodness for Dimitri. So definitely check out his channel. Dimitri, you be safe, man. And I'll hit you back. I'll make plans and I'll make arrangements. Have a good one, man.
Thanks for doing that. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was very energetic, very refreshing. Feel like I had a shower. That's great. Dimitri is awesome. Daniel seemed to be on board for this back and forth, this quote unquote debate. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. So I'll try to make that work for next week. I'll try to arrange it.